There's always that one kid in every school, the quiet one. The kid who sits alone at lunch, never talks, never laughs, and always seems somewhere else. We thought Ethan was just that kind of weird. We joked about him, ignored him, pretended not to notice the way he watched us. But the thing about quiet kids, sometimes they're not lonely. Sometimes they're listening to something the rest of us can't hear. This is the story of what we found and what found us when we stepped inside his basement. You might think it's just a story. I hope you're right. I've never been good at remembering faces from high school, but his Eli Turner, I could never forget. When I first saw him, he was sitting in the back corner of Mrs. Kent's history class, staring at the window instead of the board. The kind of stare that wasn't daydreaming, it was blank hollow, like he wasn't really in there. He transferred in the middle of sophomore year. No one knew from where. His uniform was a little too big, his shoes were old, and he carried one of those small sketchbooks everywhere, always tucked under his arm. People didn't talk to him much. It wasn't bullying exactly, just that quiet avoidance that happens when someone doesn't seem to belong. There was something off about Eli. Not dangerous, not at first, just unsettling. The first time he spoke to me, it was weirdly abrupt. I dropped my pen under his desk, and when I bent down to grab it, I noticed his sketchbook was open. He was drawing something, no, someone. It looked like a figure standing in the woods, thin and featureless, with long arms that reached the ground. There were shadows curling around it, and dozens of tiny white eyes in the darkness. When he noticed me looking, he snapped the book shut. Then he said, without even glancing at me, "You shouldn't look at that." His voice was quiet, flat, but there was something about it that made my stomach twist, like he was warning me, not scolding me. After that, I started noticing strange little things. He always walked home alone, even when it rained. He never sat with anyone at lunch, yet somehow his tray was always full. Someone must have been giving him food, but no one admitted to it. And sometimes during class, he'd whisper to himself. Not loud enough for anyone to understand, but you could see his lips moving. Rumors started spreading fast. Some said Eli's parents were cultists. Others claimed he lived with an uncle who collected dead animals. One guy swore he saw Eli burying something behind the football field. After practice looked like a doll, but bigger. I didn't believe any of it. Every school had its weird kid, right? I figured Eli was just different. Lonely, maybe artistic in a creepy way. But then, something happened that made everyone stop laughing about him. One Friday, Mrs. Kent was handing out assignments when she noticed something written on the chalkboard that hadn't been there before. It said in messy white chalk, "You're next." And underneath, drawn with alarming precision, was the same faceless figure I'd seen in Eli's sketchbook, arms stretching too long, body thin as a shadow. Everyone froze. Even Mrs. Kent just stood there for a second before erasing it quickly. When we all turned toward Eli, he was already looking at us, with that same blank stare. Only this time, there was the faintest hint of a smile. That was the first time I remember feeling afraid of him. Not the kind of fear that makes you run. The kind that makes you go quiet, makes your skin feel tight, and your thoughts start to whisper. There's something wrong with that boy. After that chalkboard incident, things changed. Nobody talked to Eli, not even out of curiosity anymore. It was as if the whole class made an unspoken pact. Don't look at him, don't talk to him, Don't even think about him. But of course, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Every morning when I came into class, he was already there, sitting in the same seat, sketchbook open, head down. His pencil never stopped moving. He'd look up only when the bell rang, then close the book like he was locking something inside. At first, I thought he was just one of those quiet kids who draw creepy stuff to get attention. But then people started finding notes. The first one showed up in Emma Carter's locker. She was the type who liked to joke about Eli, saying he looked like he ate moths in his basement. That morning, when she opened her locker, she screamed. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper. No name, no message, just a drawing. The same tall, faceless figure, only this time it was holding a knife. And above it, written in neat block letters, "You shouldn't have said that." Emma accused Eli, obviously. The principal called him into the office, searched his bag, even flipped through his sketchbook. They didn't find anything except drawings of trees, crows, and, well, something else. I overheard Mr. Latham, the vice principal, muttering that the last few pages had uncomfortable content. He wouldn't say what that meant, but I remember how pale he looked when he came back into the hallway. After that, nobody wanted to get near Eli, not even the teachers. He sat alone, ate alone, walked alone. Still, the notes didn't stop. They started appearing in random places, slipped under classroom doors, taped to lockers, even stuffed in the lost and the found box. Every one of them had a drawing. Sometimes the faceless man, sometimes a dark house with something moving in the windows. Once someone found a picture of a group of stick figures standing in a circle around a hole in the ground. The caption read, "Basement." That word stuck with me for days. Eli's house was near the woods, and people whispered that he lived in an old farmhouse with no neighbors. A few said there was a locked cellar door behind the property. Others swore they'd seen a dim light coming from underground at night. At first, I laughed it off. Teenagers invent stories all the time, it's what we do. But then something happened that made me wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was truth behind it. One afternoon after school, I stayed behind to help Mrs. Kent clean up the classroom. When I went to throw away some papers, I noticed something on Eli's desk. A scrap of notebook paper torn along the edges. There was a sketch, rough but detailed enough that I recognized the setting instantly. It was our classroom. Desks, windows, the teacher's board, all there. Only in the corner where I was standing, there was a small figure me. And right behind me, drawn in faint, shaky pencil, was that same faceless thing looming over my shoulder. I froze. The longer I stared, the more I could have sworn the pencil lines didn't just look smudged, they looked wet. I turned to look around the room, half expecting Eli to be there watching me. But his seat was empty. He'd already gone home. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless thing standing behind me, its arms too long, its body stretching in unnatural ways. I told myself it was just a drawing, that Eli was just a lonely, disturbed kid trying to scare people. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe he was trying to warn me. By the time spring rolled around, everyone at school had some kind of story about Eli Turner. Most of them were made up, obviously claims that he talked to animals or that his house was filled with jars of blood. Dumb, childish rumors. But the thing was, nobody ever actually went near his place to prove them wrong. Not until that night. It started as a dare. We were sitting behind the gym, the way we always did, after late practice, me, Kyle, Jenna, and Marcus. The sun was dropping behind the woods, painting everything gold, and Kyle brought up Eli like it was some harmless campfire topic. You know he lives out near Old Pine Road, right? No, he doesn't, Marcus said. That's where the Turners used to live. His parents died or something. Exactly. Kyle smirked. So who is he living with now? We all looked at each other. No one knew. That's when Jenna, always the one to push things too far, said it. Let's find out. Kyle laughed, but there was that spark in his eyes, the one that said he'd do it just to prove he wasn't scared. And then, like an idiot, I agreed to go too. Because honestly, I was curious. I wanted answers. I wanted to know why Eli was the way he was. Why his drawings always looked like warnings instead of art. Why he sometimes came to school with dirt under his fingernails and small cuts along his wrists, like he'd been digging for something. We planned it for Friday night. It was simple: follow him home after school, see where he lived, maybe take a picture for proof, and get out. No breaking in, no stupid heroics, just teenage curiosity. But things never go the way you plan them. When Friday came, it was raining. Not heavy, just that soft, constant drizzle that makes everything sound closer than it really is. Eli left school as usual, hood up backpack, slung tight. He didn't take the bus. He walked. We followed from about half a block away, trying to stay quiet. The streets got emptier as we went, the houses more spaced out. Eventually, we left the neighborhood entirely and ended up on an old dirt road lined with trees. The farther we walked, the less it felt like we were following a student, and more like we were being led somewhere. No one talked much. The only sounds were the rain and the soft crunch of our shoes in the mud. Finally, after what felt like forever, Eli turned down a narrow path through the woods. There was a mailbox at the entrance, rusted and bent, with no name. The flag was up, even though no one had used it in years. Through the trees, we saw a house. It wasn't completely abandoned, but it looked close. 2 stories, sagging porch, dark windows, and vines crawling up one side. A single dim light glowed from inside, flickering like a candle. Eli walked up the porch steps, paused, and looked over his shoulder. For a moment, I thought he saw us. My heart stopped, but he just stood there still as stone before unlocking the door and disappearing inside. We waited 5 minutes, 10, no movement. Kyle finally whispered, "All right." We go up, take a quick look, and bounce. Easy. I almost said no. I should have. But something pulled me forward, that same morbid curiosity that makes you stare at a car crash. We crept closer. The yard was overgrown, the air thick with the smell of wet dirt and rot. On the porch, I noticed muddy footprints, not just one set. Several. Some looked fresh, some older. When I tried to peek through the window, it was too dark to see inside. But I could hear something faint, like whispering. Not voices exactly, more like breath against wood. Kyle, of course, went straight to the door and put his hand on the knob. "Dude," I hissed, "he's in there. Relax. I just wanna." He froze. There was a sound behind the door, a slow dragging sound, like someone moving something heavy across the floor. Jenna covered her mouth. Marcus took a step back. Then just as Kyle let go of the handle, the noise stopped. Silence. And then a voice, quiet, hoarse, coming from the other side of the door. "I know you're there." We bolted. All of us. Branches whipped our faces as we tore down the dirt path, slipping in the mud not stopping until we reached the streetlights again. No one said a word the whole walk home. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about his voice, calm, deliberate, like he'd been expecting us. But what really haunted me was the sound I'd heard before he spoke. That dragging noise. It didn't sound like furniture. It sounded like something being pulled across the floor. I told myself I was done with Eli Turner. After that night, none of us talked about what happened. We didn't even look at each other in the halls. It was like pretending nothing happened would somehow erase the sound of that voice behind the door. But silence never makes fear go away. It just lets it fester. A few days later, Kyle stopped coming to school. At first, we figured he was just skipping. He did that a lot. But by the third day, Mrs. Kent told us he'd been reported missing. His parents said he'd gone out after dinner and never came home. The police came to school asking questions. They even called me and the others into the office one by one. When it was my turn, the officer asked if Kyle had been acting strange lately. I lied. I told him no. I didn't mention the house, or the voice, or the dragging sound behind the door, because I knew what they'd think: 4 teenagers sneaking into some kid's property at night, playing detective. They'd never believe what we actually heard. Still, that guilt, it started eating at me. Every time I walked past Eli in the hallway, my throat went dry. He didn't look at me. He never did. But there was something about him now that made me want to disappear. His face looked paler, eyes darker, like the color had drained out of him. And one morning, as I passed by his desk, I saw his sketchbook open again. This time, he wasn't drawing the faceless figure. He was drawing a boy, tall, broad-shouldered, with a distinct scar on his eyebrow. Kyle. The drawing showed him lying on the ground, eyes open but empty, and behind him, faintly penciled in the shadows, the outline of a basement door. That image wouldn't leave my head. All day I could feel it pressing at the back of my mind, whispering. By the time the final bell rang, I'd already made up my mind. I needed to go back. I told myself it was for Kyle. Maybe he'd gone there. Maybe Eli knew something. Maybe he was in trouble. But deep down, I think I just wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't real. That what I'd heard that night was just a trick of the rain. The path through the woods felt different in daylight. Quieter. Still wrong, but calmer. Like the forest was waiting for something. Eli's house stood in the same place, slouched and gray, beneath a canopy of dark trees. The windows were all shut, and the porch looked heavier, sagging under its own weight. When I stepped closer, the smell hit me first, a sour, earthy rot, like damp leaves mixed with old meat. There was no car in the driveway, no sign of anyone home. I crept up the porch steps, every creak sounding like a scream. The front door was locked, but the side window, the one near the kitchen, had a cracked frame. When I pushed it gently, it slid open with a dry groan. Inside, the air felt heavy, like the whole house was holding its breath. Dust floated through thin light, coming from torn curtains. There were no family photos, no decorations, just piles of newspapers stacked in corners, yellowed and curling. Each one had strange markings on them, circles drawn in pencil lines, connecting random words, like someone was trying to decode a message that wasn't there. On the kitchen table sat a bowl half filled with water. Floating in it were dead insects. I tried to listen to hear if anyone was upstairs, but all I got was that distant steady sound again. Drag, pause, drag, coming from below. My pulse quickened. I knew I should have left right then, but I followed the sound. The living room floor was covered in dark stains. Some were old, faded into the wood. Others looked newer. There was a door near the back of the house, wooden, thick and locked with a rusty padlock. A few scuff marks surrounded the bottom, deep like someone had kicked it again and again, trying to get out. The dragging noise stopped, and then I heard something else. A whisper, soft but clear, coming from behind that locked door. Help. Me. It wasn't Eli's voice. It was younger. I stumbled backwards so fast I nearly tripped. My hand brushed against a photo frame lying face down on the counter. When I turned it over, the glass was cracked, but I could still make out the picture inside. A family, a man, a woman, and a small boy standing in front of that very same house. The woman's face had been scratched out with something sharp. And the boy, it wasn't Eli. It was Kyle. I dropped the frame and ran. I didn't look back until I was halfway down the road, lungs burning, tears mixing with sweat. I don't know how long I ran before I realized something chilling. The house had been completely silent when I left. That dragging sound. It had stopped only after I found the photo. Almost as if whoever was behind that door knew I was there. When we got to the basement door, none of us said a word. The hallway leading there was cold, unnaturally cold, like the air was being pulled into the cracks around that door. The metal knob was old, rusted, and warm to the touch. That didn't make sense. Jake reached out first. His hand shook. He looked at me for approval, and I nodded, though I regretted it the moment the latch clicked open. The smell hit us instantly. Rot copper and something else. Something like wet soil mixed with burnt plastic. We coughed, gagged, but pushed forward. The light from our phones barely cut through the darkness. The stairs creaked under our weight, and for a second, I was sure something below was breathing. At the bottom, we saw it. The walls were covered in photos, hundreds of them. Most of them were school pictures ours. They were taped up in messy rows, each one marked with a red X over the eyes. I found mine near the middle. The ink was still wet. There were objects, 2 broken toys, dead insects, pinned to cardboard, and what looked like parts of animal skeletons arranged in symmetrical circles. In the center of the floor was a single chair facing a TV that was flickering static. The static wasn't random, though it pulsed like it was breathing in time with something behind us. Jake whispered, "What the hell is this?" Then the TV changed. It started showing video footage from a phone. The camera was shaky, moving through a forest at night. I recognized the voice behind the lens. It was Ethan. He was talking to someone we couldn't see, whispering about the offering, about them waiting below. The last few seconds showed the camera turning towards something moving in the dark, something tall with too many limbs. Then the feed cut out. The TV went black. That's when we heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Maybe it's just the wind, I said, even though we both knew that was a lie. Then the door at the top of the stairs creaked open. Light spilled down, long shadows stretching toward us. And over the sound of our breathing, a voice, calm, quiet, and unmistakable, said, "You weren't supposed to come down here." It was Ethan, only it didn't sound like him anymore. The light flickered once, and when it came back on, he was standing halfway down the stairs, smiling in that same empty way he always did at school. His eyes were black, not dilated black. We froze. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, in a voice that wasn't his, that sounded like many voices speaking through him, he said, "Now you've seen it too." The lights went out completely. The last thing I remember is Jake screaming and something wet and cold wrapping around my neck. When I woke up, it was morning. I was lying in my own bed. My phone was on my nightstand, open to a new video. It was me standing in Ethan's basement, looking straight at the camera and smiling. When I woke up that morning, the light in my room felt wrong. Too bright, too quiet, like everything outside was holding its breath. The first thing I did was check my phone again. The video was still there, the one showing me smiling in Ethan's basement. The timestamp said 3:47 a.m. The strange thing is, I remember blacking out around 1 noon. I played the clip again, hoping I'd misremembered something. But no, it was definitely me. My voice, my clothes, the tremor in my hand. Except, I was different. My expression wasn't fear. It was calm, serene, almost as I stared into the camera, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. I tried turning the volume up. The words were faint, buried beneath static. But when I played it back the third time, I caught part of it. They're awake now. That's what I said. They're awake now. I nearly dropped the phone. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jake didn't answer my calls that morning. Neither did Tyler. Their phones went straight to voicemail. I thought maybe they were just trying to forget the whole thing, but when I checked their social media pages, something was off. Their profiles had been wiped clean. No posts, no photos, no tags. It was like they'd never existed. At school, everyone acted normal, too normal. When I asked around about Jake and Tyler, people just looked confused. Who they'd say, I don't think we have anyone named that. Even our teacher, Mr. Weller, stared at me blankly when I mentioned them. Are you sure you're feeling okay? He asked, his tone soft but cautious, like he was talking to someone unstable. That's when I started to realize it wasn't just them. Our entire class photo, the one that had hung in the hallway all semester, had changed. Ethan was still there, of course, standing in the back row with that same dead stare. But Jake and Tyler gone. Just empty space between us. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that basement again. The flickering TV, the static, the voice whispering through Ethan's mouth. At around 2:00 a.m., I heard something outside my window. Soft footsteps on the gravel. I thought maybe it was just the wind again. But then my phone lit up. A new video file. No sender. No message. Just a black thumbnail with the same title as before. They're awake now. I didn't want to open it. I really didn't. But I did. The footage showed my house from outside, through my bedroom window. The camera was shaking slightly, like someone was trying to stay hidden while filming. Then it moved closer until the lens filled with my reflection in the glass. Except it wasn't me. The thing in the reflection had my face, but its eyes were black, just like Ethan's. I dropped the phone, hard hammering. My reflection in the actual window didn't move. It stayed there, staring back, smiling. The video ended abruptly, but just before it cut off, I heard whispering again, soft, overlapping voices saying, "Now, you're one of us." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. And in the morning, my phone was gone. The only thing left on my desk was a single printed photo, me, Jake, Tyler, and Ethan standing together in that basement. Only this time, all our eyes were blacked out, and scrawled in red ink across the bottom, "You brought them home." By the third day, I stopped trying to convince anyone what happened was real. When people look at you like you're insane long enough, you start to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe the photos, The videos, the voices, maybe they were all part of some breakdown. But every time I tried to believe that something small, something off, would pull me right back into the nightmare. It started with my mom. That morning, I came down for breakfast, and she was just different. Standing at the counter back, turned to me, hands perfectly still on the cutting board. She didn't hum like she always did. Didn't move. "Mom," I said. No answer. I stepped closer. She was staring out the window into the yard. There was nothing out there except the old oak tree. Then, in a voice that wasn't quite hers, too low, too calm, she said, "You shouldn't have gone down there." My stomach dropped. When she finally turned around, her face was normal again. Her eyes warm, her smile easy. "You okay, honey?" she asked, like nothing had happened. I told her I wasn't hungry and went back upstairs. The more I tried to stay grounded, the more the world around me seemed to dissolve. The people who'd been in my life forever just faded. Their faces slipped from my memory like water through fingers. Teachers, classmates, even my own aunt gone. No records, no mentions, no trace. It was like something was rewriting reality. That night, I had a dream, or at least I think it was a dream. I was standing in the school hallway, but it was empty, the lights flickering. The floor was covered in that same muddy metallic smell from Ethan's basement. Down the hall, I saw movement. Someone tall, lanky, dragging a bag behind them. When they turned the corner, I saw their face. Jake, or what used to be Jake. His skin was pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in months. His mouth hung open, and when he spoke, his voice came out in multiple tones like Ethan's. "You shouldn't have left." Then the lights went out. When I woke up, my sheets were wet with sweat. But there was something else too, mud. Real mud streaked across the floor, leading from the window to the closet. And in the closet, a folded note. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. It was written in the same messy handwriting I'd seen on the photo days earlier. "Ethan's house, midnight. Bring them back." The words didn't make sense, but something inside me, something not mine, told me I had to go. By the time I got there, the neighborhood was dark and silent. The house looked even worse than before, like it was sinking into the ground. I don't remember walking inside, but somehow I was there, standing at the top of those same basement stairs. The door was open. Light flickered below, and from the darkness came the sound of multiple voices whispering my name all at once. "Come home." My phone buzzed in my pocket. One new message. No sender. It was a photo. Me standing at the bottom of the stairs, smiling. Before I could move, the door behind me slammed shut. The whispering stopped. Then slowly, something started moving up the stairs. I turned to run. But before I reached the door, I saw my reflection in the dusty window and realized it wasn't following me. It was waiting for me. It smiled. And then the lights went out. They found my phone 3 days after I disappeared. At least that's what the police report said. But the strange thing was, no one ever saw the footage that was on it. The file was locked, corrupted, or maybe just not meant to be opened. What follows is what they managed to recover. The final recording. My voice. My last night. Recording begins. 11:57 p.m. Heavy breathing. The faint hum of static in the background. I whisper, "If anyone finds this, don't go to his house. Don't go near Ethan's basement. Whatever's there, it's not him anymore." There's a shuffling sound, like footsteps on dirt. Then the soft, wet drag of something being moved. I thought it was all in my head, I say. but they followed me. Even when I left town, even when I stopped talking about it. I see them in reflections now in windows, puddles, mirrors. They watch, waiting for me to stop pretending I don't see. The camera shifts a dim, trembling light, sweeps across a wall covered in photos. Dozens of them, faces of classmates, teachers, people from the town, all with their eyes blacked out. Then my own face centered among them. A voice, mine but not mine, speaks softly behind the camera. They need new faces now. The sound distorts. A low-frequency hum fills the air, vibrating through the mic until it almost drowns everything out. There's a sudden noise, wood splintering, something dragging itself across the floor. Then whispering, hundreds of overlapping whispers. Words too jumbled to understand, except for one phrase that repeats over and over. We are awake. The camera tilts toward the basement door. It's open. Light flickers from below, that same blue flickering static. I hear myself sobbing quietly. I didn't mean to bring them here, I whisper. I thought it was just a story. Then footsteps, coming closer. From behind the camera. The recording shakes violently. The sound turns metallic, like breathing through water. Then a voice low and calm, right beside the mic, smile. The video cuts to black. Recovered file ends, 12:04 a.m. No one ever saw me again after that night. The official report said, missing person presumed dead. But every few months, someone new goes missing, a student, a neighbor, someone who lived close to Ethan's house. And somehow, their photos always end up on a wall that shouldn't exist anymore. A wall that was burned down when the house was demolished. There's one last thing though. A few days ago, my friend Casey, one of the only people who still remembers me, said she got a message from an unknown number. It was a single video file. It showed her house through her window, and in the reflection, I was smiling. People in town still talk about Ethan's house. They call it the Hollow Home now, the place that eats time, swallows sound, and remembers names that no one else does. I used to think it was just another story to scare freshmen, a rumor recycled year after year. That was before I found the phone. It was lying half buried in the dirt behind the school gym, screen-cracked battery, long dead. The lock screen photo made my chest tighten. A group of 4 boys smiling awkwardly for a class project. One of them was my cousin, Ryan. He vanished 3 months before I transferred here. My aunt said he ran away. My mom said to stop asking questions. But his face, the half grin, the scar near his jaw, it was right there, clear as day. When I powered the phone on the screen, flickered like it was trying to breathe. There was only one file, a video. They're awake now. The same title the police had mentioned when they quietly closed the case. I shouldn't have watched it. God, I wish I hadn't. At first, it was just static. Then Ryan's voice whispering. He was in a basement, his flashlight trembling. I could hear something moving behind him, slow, wet, dragging, like something being bowled across the floor. He said, I think they're still down here. Then the light hit the wall. Photos, hundreds of them. Faces crossed out, people from our school. And in the center one that froze my blood, me. But it wasn't a recent picture. It was one I'd taken that morning. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, cracked again, but the audio kept playing. More whispers, layers upon layers. Some sounded like Ryan, some didn't. One voice, deeper hollow, said, we never left. We just needed you to look. That night I dreamed of the house. I saw the front door half open, light pulsing from inside, flickering blue and white like a heartbeat. Someone was standing in the doorway, tall, thin head, tilted too far to the side. When I woke up, my hands were covered in dirt. The next day, I drove to where the house had been. It was supposed to be gone, burned, bulldozed, erased. But there it was, whole, waiting. The windows were black. The door creaked open as I approached, though the air was still. Inside, the smell hit me damp metal, earth, and rot. My phone buzzed. A notification, new file received, smile, .mp4. I didn't press play. I didn't have to. The sound started on its own, breathing slow and wet. And from the hallway ahead, a faint glow bled through the cracks in the floorboards. I followed it. I don't know why. Every step deeper felt like stepping through memories that weren't mine. I could feel Ryan there, somewhere beneath the floor, whispering things that didn't make sense. Then I heard him clearly behind me. Don't look. I turned anyway. For a moment, the light flickered, and I saw all four of them. Ethan, Jake, Tyler, Ryan, standing in the corner. Eyes black faces, pale and wrong. They smiled perfectly in sync. Ethan stepped forward. His voice was soft, almost kind. It's your turn now. The light snapped off, and then there was only static. It's been 3 days since that night. They say the house burned down again. But when I went to look, there was nothing, not even ash. Just a single photo pinned to a tree. 4 boys. One new face among them. Mine. And across the bottom, written in red, welcome home. It's strange how silence can feel alive. How it can stretch, breathe, and settle into the corners of a room like it's listening. That's what this town feels like now, listening. People still whisper about Ethan's house, but no one dares go near where it once stood. The land is empty, fenced off, condemned. And yet every night around midnight, someone swears they see a light flicker through the trees. A faint blue pulse, like the house never really left. It's been 2 weeks since I watched the video. 2 weeks since I saw Ryan and them standing in the dark. I tell myself it wasn't real, that it was all a hallucination. But I can't ignore the changes. I don't dream anymore. Or maybe I do, and I just don't wake up from them. When I look in the mirror now, sometimes it doesn't match. The reflection moves a split second late, like it's thinking before I do. And once, just once, it smiled, while I didn't. That's when I stopped turning on the lights at night. I've started hearing things too. Not loud, just small, delicate whispers, under the hum of electricity, under the sound of the fridge, under my breath. Sometimes they say my name. Sometimes they laugh softly, like they're proud of something I haven't realized yet. Last night I heard a knock, 3 times, slow. When I looked outside, the street was empty. But there at the edge of the yard, half hidden by the dark, was the house. Not standing in one place, growing. It wasn't bricks or wood anymore. It was a shape made of shifting shadows and memory, its windows breathing like lungs. And in one of them, faint but unmistakable, Ryan watched me. He didn't look dead, just patient. That's when my phone lit up again. New file, no sender. The Hollow Home .mp4. The thumbnail was pitch black, but when I opened it, I saw myself sitting right here in my room, typing these words. The timestamp was from 5 minutes in the future. The me on the screen looked calm, peaceful even. Then he turned to the camera eyes, completely black, and whispered, "It's your turn to remember." The screen glitched, and for a second, the image split into 4 figures standing behind me. Ethan, Jake, Tyler, Ryan. Then a 5th shape began to form, pixel by pixel, taking my outline. And then I heard it again. That low static hum. The same one from the basement. I don't think it ever left me. Maybe that's the curse, not dying, not disappearing, but becoming part of the story. The house doesn't need walls anymore. It lives through the people who remember it, through the stories we tell. If you've listened this far, you've already let it in. You've pictured the house. You've heard their names. And that's all it needs. Because once you imagine the hollow home, it knows where to find you. They said the house was gone, burned, erased, forgotten. But I've seen it. In dreams, in reflections, in the corners of rooms where the light doesn't reach. Maybe Ethan's gone. Maybe Jake, Tyler, and Ryan too. Or maybe they just moved into a new home. And if you ever feel something watching you in the dark, don't look. Because once you do, the hollow home knows your name.